Control is decided before consequences become visible because time never waits for confirmation. What feels stable often survives only because losses have not surfaced yet. Pressure does not announce itself when it arrives. It accumulates quietly inside accepted tolerance. Once alignment slips, every later decision inherits a narrowing set of options. Nothing fails all at once. It fails through permissions that cannot be reversed. By the time imbalance is noticed, the outcome is already moving forward. Intake control is decided before anyone calls it risk, because volume arrives already committed. Once the first exclusions are missed, every later correction becomes smaller and more expensive. Separation here is not cleanup. It is boundary setting, under pressure, with no rewind available. What passes unnoticed now becomes the baseline that the whole line inherits. A stable feed is not a comfort. It is a contract enforced by measurement without negotiation. If the stream surges unevenly, the system begins borrowing precision it cannot repay. The first fracture defines everything that follows, because structure is lost faster than it is rebuilt. When cracking drifts, the process stops being controlled and becomes merely continuous. Hull removal is where hidden loss starts, because light fractions disappear without resisting. Misclassification here does not look like failure. It looks like normal throughput. Flaking compresses variability into a new form, and that form is unforgiving under load. Once thickness drifts, extraction efficiency becomes a silent debt across the entire run. Conditioning is not heating, it is alignment that decides what the solvent can reach. When moisture and temperature diverge, the later system pays in instantly instead of yield. Control here is a narrow window because speed will not slow down to be corrected. Silence often marks the moment. Misalignment becomes accepted as normal. Extraction is where momentum becomes irreversible, because separation happens inside close constraints. If micella quality drifts, recovery becomes containment rather than capture. The wash stages are not repetition, they are the last chance to remove. what cannot be fixed later. When this margin is spent downstream, purity becomes a performance, not a result. Dissolvmentizing is where safety and quality share the same threshold and both punish drift. If stripping falls short, residue remains, even when sensors claim stability. The column does not forgive hesitation, because residence time is already spoken for. Once vapor handling slips, the system carries risk forward without announcing. Recovery is only real when return loops stay balanced under continuous demand. A small leak of control here becomes a large loss everywhere else. Crude oil separation is where uncertainty must be reduced, not removed. If solvent removal is incomplete, every refining decision begins already compromised. Refining is a sequence of irreversible choices made while flow refuses to pause. When reactions drift, the line cannot correct, it can only proceed with damage. Degumming and neutralization are not purification, they are triage, under strict limits. If separation splits poorly, loss hides in byproduct and never reappears. Bleaching removes what should not remain, but it cannot restore what was overstripped. Once adsorption is misjudged, the result is stable only in appearance. Deodorization is where the final tolerances harden into product identity under heat and vacuum. If this balance slips, nothing later can recover what volatility has already taken. Polishing and holding are the last points where stability can be verified without changing the outcome. Silence often separates operators from observers because drift rarely announces itself. Filling is not the end, it is the moment the process becomes unchangeable inventory. When sealing or inspection slips, failure ships at full speed and looks identical. The line finishes without celebration because completion is only proof that control held under load. What survived the run is what the system deserved, and nothing more. The system has stopped them. Nothing further will correct what was already decided under load. Few recognize why it ended this way, because most results appear stable long after their costs were low. Recognition separates operators from observers, and silence leaves alignment unverified.